Welcome to the Jasper Blueprint, a podcast for established business leaders to explore what it takes to build a robust business in a rapidly changing operating environment. The volume and scope of decisions you need to make and the uncertainty and constraints you operate within aren't going anywhere. So this time that we have together here is a window that you can carve out to think, reflect and question so that you and your business can grow. Unexamined beliefs about the purpose of business limit your ability to make money. Let me show you a different way to think about, build and run your business. Because business is not a zero-sum game. Someone doesn't have to lose for you to win. Your choices aren't binary. Money and meaning aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, I'll show you how merging money and meaning is the competitive advantage your business has been missing. Let's jump in and I'll break down the process for you step by step so that you can build a business you're proud of. Today in the podcast, we're going to look at a bit more of the some of the clues, some of the hints that there might be some unconscious beliefs about the purpose of business that are driving our decisions, our priorities, and how we're behaving as leaders running a business. The angle that I want to bring to that conversation is this idea of looking at both money and meaning. And so what I want you to think about as we jump into the episode is that there are unconscious beliefs, different biases, things that all of us have, which are playing out and shaping the way that we engage, what we're drawn to, what we prioritize, how we're making decisions, how we behave, who we hire. All of those things don't just emerge out of nowhere. They come from either conscious or unconscious beliefs and ideas. And part of what I want to be helping plant some seeds for you, if you like, or challenging you on, is that the more you can become conscious of those things and then make some really intentional decisions about whether something is important enough to you or whether you really do believe it enough to allow it to have that kind of pull or influence on you, that it's actually driving really significant components of how you operate in life and in business. So when we think about that, one of the pieces I want you to have in your mind is that the reason why this is actually really important and not just a thing that you might want to consider at some point in your business, but the reason why it's important now, the reason why this is actually urgent and requires you to stop and give it some attention is that these unconscious beliefs about the purpose of business and the way in which most of us are operating, where we think about money in one space and meaning or contribution in a different space, is actually really having negative impacts in your business. Here's how. Right down to the financial stability and the long-term viability of your business. If you don't catch yourself, if you don't start to tune in now to what those beliefs are that are driving your decision making, then what is going to happen for you is that you are going to not see serious risks that are coming in this rapidly changing environment that you are operating in. You are not going to spot the risks and have time to figure out and mitigate those when you are not connecting the dots on what's going on, both internally in your business, with employees, with other owners, if there's more than one owner in the business, with the leadership team, at all different levels within the business itself, whether it's about connecting dots with shifts in expectations with customers, or whether it's more broadly in the compliance and regulatory space, or as you export into other markets, whatever that is in your business, when you don't take the time to become more conscious of these drivers and these beliefs you have about the purpose of business, and when you don't start to look at both money and meaning, giving them both equal value, then you are putting yourself and your business at risk. So there is a massive piece here around urgency from a risk perspective. The other piece, if you prefer to look at things from a positive angle, is that there's huge opportunities for those who actually can learn to spot connections, who can anticipate change, who can see what certain decisions or positioning yourself as a business will allow and the opportunities that creates. If you learn to leverage those opportunities, then you will have the exact opposite of what I just said, and you will instead strengthen that positioning in the market of your business and also position the organization to be able to tap into and grow and scale in ways that give you more of that financial stability as well as confidence in a longer term sustainable business over time, not just in short windows. So that's something to just think of in terms of why this is an urgent conversation now and why you need to actually pause and think about these things that we're going to talk through today. I want to think about how to give you a clue, if you like, whether maybe there's some unconscious beliefs driving how you're operating your business that you may not have tuned into. So I want to give you a few of the phrases or ways of thinking that I see in leaders, which give me a bit of a clue or an insight into the fact that they are thinking from a perspective that sees money and meaning as two very distinct and mutually exclusive areas. So listen to these and just be honest with yourself. Think through whether these are present for you or whether they're phrases you've heard yourself or others in your business using. The first is this phrase, which I hear all the time. I'm running a business, not a charity. Have you ever said that? Have you ever said that to a team member who is asking you to consider a different project or to think about a different type of packaging or some kind of change to the business that you saw as a distraction or an expense? And you used that phrase of saying, I'm running a business, not a charity, as the reason why you couldn't consider this thing. The next comment or way of thinking is to say, once we're more profitable, then we could entertain that idea. Or once we're more profitable, we'll start to look at changes we could make that would have more positive environmental impacts. Or once we're more profitable, we can start to take our team's well-being more seriously and think about what constraints we want to put on the hours we ask them to work or the conditions they're working in. Those types of pieces, if you are pushing them off to be something you will consider or take into account later, once you're more profitable, again, that is a clue that you are treating these things as two distinct pieces rather than actually learning to change the way you're thinking about the purpose of business and how it operates and how to build a better business. The third phrase is to say something like, we support X, Y, or Z charity. So we support this particular charity that is looking at issues of supporting women coming out of domestic violence, or we support this charity that is providing clean water in countries around the world. If you find yourself in situations where when any kind of topic or pressure from your team or from customers or friends that you're talking to, you feel a bit defensive about how your business is contributing, and you find that your go-to comment is to justify that you are generous and that you are contributing by pointing to the donations you make or the charities you support, that's a clue. The last one I want to give you is the example that I've heard many, many times over the last few decades, which is people saying, once I sell the business or once I retire, once I've paid off my mortgage, there'll be all of these different things they'll insert there. But once I've done these things, which mean I, in my own mind, am set up financially and I no longer have pressures or responsibilities of making the business work, then at that point, I'll be able to give back and I'll be able to be generous. But right now, I'm in the thick of it and I'm having to make the business work. So that's 4 of the just quick examples of really common phrases or ways of thinking that I see business leaders falling into, which are signals or signs that they have these unconscious beliefs about the purpose of business that sees money and meaning in 2 different camps. If you remember me talking about the 2 camps trap, and if not, go back and have a listen to some of the episodes where I talk about that. But the 2 camps trap is the way that I describe how we have started in the last few decades to think about and operate our businesses. Since the 70s, when Friedman brought in the idea around the purpose of business being this maximization of shareholder value, or profit maximization becoming this topic of conversation. The reality is that it has led to business leaders taking on these approaches in those examples I just gave you, where they almost think they're changing hats. What hat am I wearing? Am I the business owner today? If so, my focus needs to be about making money. And if I am not wearing my business owner hat and I'm me as just a general person wanting to show up and contribute to what I care about, then in that setting, I can have a philanthropic hat on or a generous hat where I'm giving and sharing and making donations or contributions. Those beliefs really do rob us of the power of business. And part of what I am hoping to go on a journey with you on is to shift in your mind, to first make you conscious of that and get you to just ask the question of, do you actually believe what it is that currently has just been taken on board as a given for you? That is the purpose of business. Well, actually, whichever way you land, whether you think you do believe that or whether you then go, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that was driving me and I want to operate differently. Either way, part of what we're going to explore together and part of what I want to unpack is trying to demonstrate to you the actual limitations of that and the way that that type of mindset robs you of the power of both. It actually limits your ability to make more money because in the climate you are working in the rapidly changing environment, the expectations that are on you, the pressures and constraints that are now on businesses that have not been present in the last few decades are becoming more and more apparent, and you are not going to be able to ignore them or push them off as externalities. You will be forced in the next few years to engage with and think about the demands and expectations of your team in different ways. If you actually want to be a company that can recruit and retain great talent, you are going to be forced to engage with and respond to the expectations of customers who now will hold you accountable to levels of transparency and consistency around how you are actually generating your income in the first place. You'll remember, I am constantly saying to you, how you make money matters. This is the bringing back into our control and responsibility, the decisions we are making inside our business, inside the core business activities, how we operate the business. Those are the pieces you can't ignore. Customers will be demanding that you actually take responsibility for that. You can't just put a nice little story on social media, not back it up, and then make completely different decisions that are purely driven by you trying to reduce costs and increase profit and hope you can get away with that. Not an option moving forward. Equally, when we think about the other external driver here, you are in an environment now where there are changing, growing, and restricting aspects around the compliance and regulatory environment that you're operating in. Regardless of what area you're in, there are going to be both financial expenses that you haven't been conscious of before, and there are going to be responsibilities you have as a leader, whether you're a director of the company, an owner of the company, or whatever role you take in that. There are responsibilities and areas that are now legally going to be on your shoulders. And if you want to be setting your business up for long-term success, and if you want to be reducing the risk that you are putting yourself and others at in terms of exposing the business to risks that could have been mitigated if you had thought differently, then this is a conversation you want to be part of. This is a conversation you want to shift your attention over to and stop listening to the conversations that are taking things like ESG, environmental, social and governance issues, and making them either just fluffy additional pieces that are expensive and a distraction from your strategy, or aspects where there's purely an approach that is sort of taking that transactional ticker box exercise and being quite dismissive. It's not actually really taking the opportunity to ask different questions, have a different perspective as a business owner, and really strengthen the financial stability of your business, de-risk it from that long-term pieces that I've talked to you about, and also spot opportunities and learn to leverage those quicker, pick up on the things that you could be building into your business differently moving forward. So those are the aspects that I want to kind of impress on you about the urgency of this and the reasons why you need to ask yourself those questions. You need to use the examples I gave you and say, what's happening here for me? Where are those beliefs at around the purpose of business? And like I said, whatever your answer is, it's then starting to engage with this concept of how is that actually playing out? What risks am I putting myself and my business at by continuing to see money and meaning as two different things? By seeing something like these ideas around either environmental issues or social issues or the conditions that my staff are working in, seeing those as something you might get to at some point, or that they're nice to have additional pieces once the business is doing well, is a very unwise strategy. You want to shift that if that's how you're currently operating. The last piece that I want to just bring this down to so that it's in a really tangible area is the aspect of how this plays out inside your organization in terms of your team and the culture that you're creating. So there's many ways that we could dive into this topic of money and meaning and starting to think about those differently and to think about the unconscious beliefs we have and what's driving our decisions. But today I want to focus in on that aspect of your team, because you are operating in a recruitment kind of environment at the moment, or an employment space, where people are asking different questions now of who they want to work for, why they want to work there, what makes it satisfying or fulfilling, what are the aspects that make a brand something that they would feel proud of being associated with. People are looking for different things, they are asking different questions, and they have different expectations than they once did. And so one of the pieces I want you to think about today is that when you look at something like the environmental, social, and governance components of how you're operating your business, when you look at starting to run the business in a way that really intentionally is creating a win-win, where you're not just trying to maximize profits at all cost, ignoring any damage you're doing, but you're saying, I want to learn to build this business in a way that I can be proud of and that actually is generating more value, is bringing more value into the world. And as a result of giving that value out, we are also capturing value in return. As you think about your business in this way, what I want you to realize is that, and we'll talk about this over the next few weeks, you don't need to try to be all things to all people. In fact, I beg you to not try to be all things to all people. This isn't me telling you you need to jump on the bandwagon of every popular cause or topic and start to be running in 50 different directions, trying to address a whole bunch of different social or environmental issues. I don't want you to do that. But what I do want you to do is to get really clear on who you are as an organization, what you care about, what your core values are that actually inform how you behave and show up, and have that picture that is a shared articulation, a shared vision of what it is you are wanting to be part of as an organisation and what your role is in that. So there's these multiple different foundational factors that I've just run you through. Once you're clear on those things, then from a recruitment and retention perspective, in the competitive market that you're operating in, where you want to get the best talent and you don't just want to attract them, you want to retain them. You want to keep those amazing performers in your organisation. The clearer you are on those foundational pieces, the better job you will do at attracting the right people to you who are passionate about the same things and want the opportunity to be able to be part of making a difference in those ways. So it will draw the right people to you and excite the right people. So there's some beautiful alignment and synergy there. But what it will also do is it gives you some credibility and a way to respond if there are multiple different demands being made from your team about different areas or different issues they care about or would like the business to start to contribute to. If you're able to respond not simply by always being defensive or saying no, or using one of those comments I gave you before of saying to them, I'm running a business, not a charity, or once we're more profitable, we can consider contributing to or making a difference in those areas that you're suggesting. Thank you, team member, but not today. Instead of responding in that way, you're able to give a really clear answer that says, that is an incredibly important issue. And if personally you are doing work or contributing to that yourself, that's amazing. And we really want to support and celebrate you for doing that. But as a company, what we do know is we can't do everything, but we know what we're good at and we know what we care about. And here are the ways that we are contributing through all the different levers we have to pull. Here's how what we care about is shaping who we hire and how we operate as a team in terms of the culture we're building. Here are the things that we care about and how they're playing out in our choices around procurement in our supply chain or who we're purchasing from. Here's how our values and our vision and what we care about is playing out in terms of the types of customers we work with and we support and the outcomes we help them achieve. Here's how our values and our vision is playing out in the way that we actually present ourselves in the market, or whatever it is. You'll have your own particular answers to that. But what you will find is that instead of detracting or frustrating team members, even if their particular issue that they are really passionate about is not exactly the same as yours, when you don't treat contribution or meaning as something that is a distraction from your core business strategy, if you don't just push people off and say, oh my goodness, we're doing far more important things here, trying to make this business work, we can't possibly have this conversation. If you can instead articulate what you are doing and why, and give people that understanding of where your decisions are coming from, what's driving you, and the filters you're using to make decisions, that is going to massively increase your team's trust in you. It's going to give you the authority and credibility to make different decisions that they may or may not agree with, but they now understand where that's coming from. So it reduces your defensiveness. It helps people be much clearer of whether you're in a company they want to work with or not. And then for those that are either already working with you or choose to work with you, who are passionate about things that aren't necessarily in line with exactly what you're contributing to, they will understand that distinction and still see integrity and consistency in the way that you're doing what you're doing. And that means there will still be some trust built there because you have the credibility of following through. Just leaving it with that example today, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, I want you to think about the aspects of when you now come back to your particular business and you think of how these aspects that I've talked to you about that are actually urgent, that need to be thought about now and that are your responsibility as the leader. When you bring these into your business and just first up take that angle around how it will affect recruitment and retention of your staff, think about and maybe jot down some thoughts on what are the areas where your articulations or the ideas and the ways you share those with the team aren't as clear as they need to be. And when are you going to create some space, and who needs to be in that conversation for you to get clearer on what is most important at that foundational level, so that you can start to have a different conversation and not just assume your team understands why you're making certain decisions as a business, but make it explicit and connect for them what is going on and why you're doing what you're doing, so that you start to build a different relationship with your team where there is trust and rapport over time. And the second part of that, in terms of the action I want you to take related to this exploration, is to also then start to commit to a really genuine exploration with your team to explore what it is they care about, what their dreams and visions and goals are for them personally. Now, depending on the size of your organisation, it might be that you're asking managers to have those types of conversations with their own individual teams. But understanding your team members as individuals is going to be really critical as we go on this journey together, because part of what you want to do is that first step I gave you of getting better, clearer articulations of your foundational elements as a business. But you need to have insight and an understanding and genuine curiosity in what it is your team cares about and where they're hoping to contribute, or where they want their career to go, or what would make them proud of working for your company. You need to understand those things as a second step, because when we start to bring these things together around money and meaning, we want to be explicit. So just like I said, you don't want to assume your team understand why you're making decisions in the business. You also don't want to assume that your team understand the connection between the work they're doing and the results that your organisation is achieving. So the more you can understand their drivers, you can then have yourself or their managers working with them to really explicitly map out, here's how what you do every day is actually playing a role in contributing to the types of results we're getting as an organisation. Connecting those dots, making it explicit and explaining how the work they do ties into and contributes to the company's vision and the types of results or outcomes you're generating, gives people a sense of purpose and drives motivation and their own performance. But you will also be able to make that more personalised step of saying to them, and I know you well enough that I can now also make explicit how that is going to connect back into you achieving your goals and your dreams. So as this part of the business grows and we see the financial stability increasing, we've incentivized you so that when the business wins, you win. And you've said to me, you are trying to save up and set your own family up in these areas, or you've got certain goals about providing for your kids' education. Here's how these results will also play out in helping you achieve your goals. So I want you to think of both of those areas as your points of action this week when you think about bringing this to ground, not just having it as an academic exercise or an interesting thought experiment, but thinking about it from that perspective of recruitment and retention. I hope that's helpful. And if you have any questions or there's things that aren't clear, please shoot me a message. And I'm very happy on the podcast to answer those questions or to cycle back to you privately and have a bit of correspondence. So if anything's not making sense, jump on and shoot me a message. But think about what's driving you, your unconscious and conscious beliefs. Question those in a different way, and then drive to action with those 2 steps I've given you around the business itself and then around your employees' goals and visions and understanding that. Make things explicit. Don't just assume that it's obvious.